Welcome to another episode of This Week with Sabir. Next in our hot seat is Shay Berman from Digital Resource. Let me tell you a bit about him. Shay is the founder and president of Digital Resource, a three-time Inc. 5000 ranked and great place to work, certified digital marketing agency located in South Florida. Beautiful place there. At the age of 29, he's leading a growing team of over 75 marketing specialists, serving businesses of all sizes across the nation. And he was included in 2020 American Marketing Association for under 40. He's going to have to explain that to us. And South Florida Business Journal for under 40, Entrepreneurship in South Florida, Business and Wealth Up-and-Comer Awards, and many more accolades. You could read it in the bio included. Shay, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Sabir. I'm very excited to be here today.
Amazing. So before we get started talking about, because the people who are tuning in, they want to know about and the culture that this environment has created. It actually is more conducive to freelancing, creating your digital agency or other types of agency. So people who are tuning in, they want to learn about doing that, starting and growing it, and you've done a phenomenal job of that. And we're going to go through that journey during this interview. But before we get started, tell us, what happened at 18 or 21, Shay, at that age. What were you doing? How did you come about to that journey to start your agency?
Yeah, I'll take you a little bit younger than that, actually. So I was in middle school when my mom would make me do the gardening, trim the bushes, do the mulching. I lived in Michigan at the time, and landscaping in the spring was big. And throughout my middle school and my high school and even my college years, I continued to grow that landscaping business. And I eventually got it to be about 25, 30 people full-time when I was 22 years old, just graduated from Michigan State University. And I had grown it really because of my passion for the marketing side and getting those leads in the door. And combined with my sales and my customer service, it was very successful. But Sabir, that wasn't really what I wanted to do my whole life. I wanted to live in Florida, and I really had a passion for marketing. So I moved to Florida, worked for a marketing agency for about 6 months doing cold call, door-to-door sales. Worst job in the world, but I learned a ton. And it was at that time where I almost went back into landscaping. And as I'm about to pull the trigger and buy the trucks, get the parking spaces, get the equipment, and start my marketing, my dad says to me, you should really try a marketing company. I was like, why would I do that? He's like, well, you're amazing at marketing. That's what's made your first business successful. You got the customer service side, you got the sales side, and those things make a great marketing agency. Why don't you just try it? So about 7 years later, a little bit longer, this was my try. And it's been a great experience. I'm very happy I did this instead of another landscaping company here in South Florida.
Yeah, actually, one of the, in 2021, the first episode I did, that gentleman also, Brian Clayton, I think was his name. I don't want to get it wrong. Brian Clayton from yourgreenpal.com.
I watched that.
Yeah. Very similar storyline, but the way he pivoted was not an agency, but he actually came up with a landscaping Airbnb type, Uber-like service for landscaping.
Yeah,
that's very interesting. So how do you go from, being the only employee, right? And the story is pretty similar to a lot of freelancers, right? They have a craft. They have a specific craft. They're really good at Google Ads. They're really good at Adobe Photoshop, or they do video editing, copywriting, whatever. In your case, you were the only one handling all aspects of your business when you got started.
That's right.
How do you pivot from there to running a 75-person organization, and growing it in 4 years with zero outside funding, no funding, 1,900% growth rate?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the hardest parts of the experience, but one of the most fun. First thing is, when I first got started, I loved search engine optimization. That was my passion. I knew how to get a website ranking well. I knew the Google algorithm. I paid attention to it closely. I knew how to test it. And so that was what I was selling mostly. Combined with that, posting on social media was not a difficult thing back then. It wasn't as advanced, and it's something I could definitely throw in that mix. And so I started off by offering SEO and social media services to my clients. So first, starting off with what I know. And with that, obviously, I had to manage the accounts, I had to do sales, but all freelancers have to experience those things. But when I then had clients asking me, well, I need a website first. What are you going to SEO? How are you going to do social media if I don't have a site? Websites were what I added next. And then after that, Google ads and Facebook ads became a thing. And I just had to keep expanding. And what I did as a freelancer until I hired my first team member is I learned how to do everything good. I didn't do everything great. I didn't do everything excellent. I did it all good. But at the price points I was providing and the services I was providing and the customer service, I was still providing an amazing value to my clients, although I wasn't an expert in each field. And the next step ultimately was take off what I'm not great at. So social media posting was not a great use of my time. I wasn't the best at it. So eventually the first person I hired took that piece that I wasn't great at. And so as our services expanded and as I had to learn more, it was a constant influx of bringing new services in, being good at them, and then handing them off to experts as I could afford to hire them.
Oh, got it. I mean, that becomes kind of challenging for some people, right? Because I mean, that's a very good attitude. Like, I'm really good. I'm good at these things, but these things I'm not really that great at. I'm gonna go out there. I'm gonna get a better resource, somebody who I could add to my team, so I don't have to be the smartest person in the room.
Yeah.
It from a personality standpoint, it's a difficult thing to do. When I come across a lot of founders that if I do it, I'm gonna do it the right way. But if somebody else does it, it's not going to be the right way.
I hear that a lot. And to me, I believe the default mentality should be opposite. The default mentality should be to trust until trust is broken. So when you hire someone, you hope that you make a great decision. You won't always do that, but you hope that you make that great decision. You hope that they perform and you back them. You back them, you train them, you grow them. And from the beginning, I knew I had no other option but to trust, or I wasn't going to be able to get where I wanted to be today and in the future.
Yeah, but some folks, I mean, I'm sure that you've, having grown a company to 75 team members, I'm sure that you have share of your stories where somebody walked in and they had a great resume, right? Their LinkedIn profile looked pristine, right? But then when time came for action and delivery, they fell flat because the resume did not live up to, or the person didn't live up to the resume that they had crafted.
100%. And I think that my experience running my landscaping company, having to do so much hiring, working with people who were, in and out of jobs in that blue collar field, helped me identify people based on their character a lot better. I think that play a role in making better hiring decisions. But I can think of a great handful of people that were exactly what you just described. And you kind of just have to know that it's going to happen and still trust the process. And if you hire the wrong person, mistakes are made, clients notice, apologize profusely, correct things the best you can and find another person, because the right people are out there. And the growth of businesses and the success of entrepreneurs from startups to, longevity in their businesses is proof of that.
It's funny. The ones that are really good at marketing themselves as talent, I find it that they may not be that talented, versus people who are very talented, they're not really good at marketing themselves.
I totally agree.
So you have to dig deep to find those gems, and then once you find them, don't let them go.
1,000%. It's a rarity to get someone that can do both. So you really have to dig deep and pull things out of these people who are gems in the work that they do, because they're not advertising themselves the way that they should be.
Yep. I mean, but they're extremely talented at their craft, whatever it is. It could be working on Figma and doing UX. It could be, writing copy for ads, and they do a phenomenal job, but they're just not good at themselves marketing their skill sets so that people like you and me can find them to add them to our teams.
I know. Makes it tough.
Yeah, it makes it tough and interesting too. So with that, though, along the same lines, there's this sense of a bias, right, against millennials that I do see. I'm not a millennial. I'm a Gen Xer, so I'm an OG, right? So I do come across this stereotype of millennials and what the assumptions are about millennials. And given the fact that I've lived in the halls of VaynerMedia, working alongside Gary Vaynerchuk, and the age group in a lot of agencies tend to be on the younger side, right? So it hovers between 22 and 26 years old roughly. And I'm sure that in your agency with 75 team members, your average age is probably around that, the same.
Yep.
What do you think about the work ethic or the certain biases that people have towards millennials and their work ethics?
I think that, like all biases, they come from experience or they come from media exposure. And I think we get both of that out there. I think that there are some things that are warranted and some things that aren't. So for example, to say that a Gen Xer can't do the same amount of work or even more and better and with more care is totally incorrect. I mean, I've built this company on young people. When I first got out of college, one of my biggest frustrations is that I wanted to be like the madman and go into the typical advertising world, grow my career there. And when I was offered a starting salary of it was like minimum wage, and they said my first raise could be in 5 years, and I was upset. I'm a hardworking, driven person. They're like, you don't even ask for a raise for 5 years. So I started Digital Resource. One of the first things I said is, I'm going to hire young people. I'm going to hire the driven people that are like me, giving them opportunity to succeed. And Sabir, with that, I had no choice but to become one of the fastest growing companies in America to offer those growth opportunities and make that promise I made to myself and my team come true. So we've done it. Our people are young. Average age here is about 26, 27 years old. We've had tons of doubters, people who said, you need at least management to be in their 40s, 50s, have experience, come from that world to manage these young people. I never listened to that. I'm like, if I have the mentality I do and people say that you'll be successful, why can't my team be successful too? I have the same trust in them that I give to myself.
It makes sense. It's something that what I've seen is whenever any company talks about bringing in the gray hairs, the experience, male or female, it to me almost sounds like, even though I'm on the older side now, but I can tell you that to me it sounds like these are babies and we need a babysitter.
Yeah.
Right. But if you treat people like babies, then why are you expecting them to be adults? So that's just my POV. When you give people responsibility, maybe guidance and stuff like that, and opportunity, there might be ways that people can grow in a different way. Maybe that old style of management is not going to be applicable here. In your company being Digital Resource, right? Maybe it's not going to. The culture is not going to mix, right? That old management style culture.
I think young people are so much more elastic too. They're so much more susceptible to change and feedback, and that pushes them so much further, so much quicker. I know that our training goes faster. I just know things go further with younger people because they're just, at least the great ones, they're open to change and they accelerate things so quickly.
I mean, throughout my career, any younger person that I've seen, that in their words you can hear it, right? In their words through their action, they actually tell you, I'm a sponge. I'm going to absorb. I don't care about the paycheck. I don't care about the title. I don't care about any of those things. I just want to gain the experience. And having worked with other people around me that are very talented, that's what I want to absorb as much as I can. Because I know that if I do that for 3 years, maybe I could go and open up my own company, or I could go and get the raise that I want or get the promotion I want if I want to move on and stuff like that. I think, and those are the people. What I do is when I find them, at least in my case, when I find them, I overinvest in them because they're worth it. They're definitely worth it. Versus somebody who you're trying to get them to do their job, then okay, the person is in it for the paycheck, not necessarily the overall growth and a longer term view of their own career. Not necessarily that they're working for me or not. It's just their attitude matters.
And we notice that a lot with our interns. Like we have 7 or 8 interns right now, and they're all just here because they want to absorb. And they're hardworking, amazing individuals that I hope want to work here one day. But you see that in these extremely young people, beyond Gen X, that they just want to learn. You can find them. So back to original question, Sabir, are they lazy? Are they entitled? All these things. That's like that in every generation. That's going to be there. But I know that there are things, especially accelerated by the pandemic, that generation, my generation, does want. They want more flexibility. They want certain perks. They want to learn. They want to grow fast. And I think that it might just be more vocal because I'm sure every generation wanted those things.
Yeah, I think it's the generation before you, right? Always looks down on the next generation and says that, oh, we didn't used to do that. Look at this generation. This is horrible.
Yeah, always.
Always the case. The same thing happened. The generation before me was baby boomers, right? And from my vantage point, I'm looking down at millennials. Millennials are looking at Gen Y, right? Or Gen Z, right? And then it's a vicious cycle.
I know. It never stops. Never will.
Yeah. So let's go back a little bit, right? Shay, it's a one-person company. You have to hire that first outside hire. Take me through that. How was that?
So I imagine them almost as an assistant, and not in the assistant in the form of go get my lunch, go do that kind of thing, but assistant in the form of you will do with me what I can't and don't have the capacity to do. So it ended up being things that I wasn't great at, like I mentioned, but it would be, communicate with the website developer, figure out how to do this research. It was a partnership. Like that person was a partner, and they were definitely a great switch hitter, being able to go into any direction that I needed them. And so when I was looking for them, I wasn't defining the role like a social media specialist or a Google Ads specialist. I didn't have the money to predefine that role and to give them enough work to be able to just fill that job description. So I made it general, and our first 5 or 10 hires were pretty general hire descriptions. And we found the ones that are amazing. Some of them are still here today. And I think it's cool to be able to not put it in a box and also allow them the freedom to find their career and how they want to develop themselves. Because if they're given all these options, they could try so many cool things. You'll see what they're good at. You'll see what you don't like, and hopefully that matches up. So finding the person who's willing to do anything and grow that company with you and believe in your vision, if as long as you believe in yourself too, it's a really good pick.
So hardworking, smart people, right?
Hardworking, smart people.
And then you could craft them into responsibilities and see where they lie. Some people are great at operations. Other people might love doing payroll and HR.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth.
Literally, that's exactly it.
Okay. So one of the things that Gary says, and I believe in this too. First, exhaust your list of friends, and then move on to your family. Hire as many of them as possible, the ones that are willing to work with you and for you.
Yeah.
And before you move on to hiring outside people. How was that journey for you?
I believe in the flip side. I would first hire outside people. I believe you need to have a relationship that is separate from work, separate from your personal life, and have them separated for the most part. I do have a couple family members working for me now that I also consider my friends, but I only did that when I got to a point where I knew I can respect the boundaries, and that I only chose the people that I knew could also be respectful of the boundaries and know how to separate work and play. So I'm very much about that separation so that you can give honest, critical feedback. Because when I talk with my other entrepreneur friends, one of their biggest downfalls is that they fail to tell the father that they work with something, or the sibling that's been working with them something else. And I think that creates friction. I think that creates loss of time and loss of action. So I definitely believed in going for the opposite, although it may be against the status quo, and finding those great people that you didn't know necessarily in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's your boundaries, right? It goes both ways, right? When you're hiring family, friends, I believe that it's a little different, but with family, the boundaries need to be explained in the very beginning, because as soon as we enter the door from this company, right? We all have roles to play, right, in this company. And it's not father and son. It's not brother and brother and brother and sister or cousins or anything like that. It's work. Work needs to get done, and we need to deliver the best value we can, right? So some people are going to be supervising while other people are going to be taking direction, right? So you cannot go in there and go like, oh, he snapped at me. How dare he? I'm 5 years older than him, and blah, 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 blah. Can't do that inside of that company. As long as that is understood. And that's one of the reasons that if you see a lot of family businesses fail in the second generation, that first generation understands that aspect of it. But when it comes down to the second generation, then you have the kids playing in that, and they don't want to take anything from any one of each other. because I'm the older cousin and this is a younger cousin and stuff like that. You know,
You see that a lot.
you do, yeah. Unfortunately, so you said, so the first one was more like so you said in the first 5 to 10, you followed that rule, right? When did you start defining, the capabilities each person has and putting them into those specific roles? When did that journey happen?
I don't know. So there was no time period that I said, hey, this is when it's going to happen. It happened somewhat naturally. So in the beginning, I hired some generalists. So we literally called them digital marketing specialists. They did anything. And I would just put the things with the people that did the best. And naturally, it shook out that that person's great at social media. That person can also do web development. That person can do content writing. That person's good on the phone and can account manage. So Sabir, I definitely got lucky that the first group of people I hired were able to be these good pinch hitters and go into the directions that made us be able to specialize in different departments, if you will. But it happened naturally based on seeing what they liked and what they were good at and what we needed, and allowing them to like test the waters too. Because again, if you put someone in that box in the beginning, you never get to know what they can do over here, and maybe they get really excited about it. So it was natural based on how we were growing and how we needed the workload to be spread out. And I got very lucky that it kind of got spread out evenly amongst them.
So, I mean, you've been on this journey for about, I would say, 7, 8 years now, right?
Yeah.
Roughly. I see it in the growth cycles of every company, right? I'm involved in founder-led companies in the very beginning, all the way to very well-established companies, right? What was your first 3 years of challenges look like? The first
3 years of challenges. So from day one, there was a fear of, can I pay my bills? That's challenge number one.
Can I make payroll?
Yeah, pay my own payroll.
Yeah.
After that, I knew that we had to get a physical office at the time, especially to be able to legitimize ourselves, especially against the landscape of digital marketing, mini agencies that come and go. And South Florida can be a different world too when it comes to people coming and going places. So it was a fear that I had, that overhead, and overcoming that. And then how can I keep up with the time? Like, I'm selling, I'm account managing, I'm doing the work, and I'm training people, I'm overseeing people, I'm doing the accounting. And so it was constantly, where do I put my time, and what's the best fit for me? But as it, like I said, those generalists became specialists and I kind of got weeded out. The biggest issue then became, how do I train my people? How do I keep, not tabs, but how do I keep them going in the right direction so that we're not being reactive to issues and we're being proactive and providing better and better service? We also had super fast growth. And when I started my first office, it was about 300 square feet. And in the first year and a half, we expanded our office 5 times to get to about 1,700 square feet. So I was constantly in the back of my head scared, do we have the space? Where are we going to put someone? Like, how are we going to keep physically doing this? So I was fighting accounts, clients, team members, and physical space at all times. And you can never let one ball drop. You always had to be juggling.
So, it's kind of a chicken or the egg kind of a problem, right? Do you go get clients first to get the capital so that you can invest in growth, or do you invest in growth, pre-invest in growth based on your early cash flow that you have in order to foresee the clients growing in future? Which approach do you take in the first 3 years?
I love that question. It's a combination of both. For me, it was a constant daily analysis of our numbers, analysis of patterns of the past, and trying to create patterns of the future. And I couldn't remind myself on a daily basis that patterns of the past are not reflective of patterns of the future. They don't really mean anything. It's all helping you convince yourself. So Sabir, what I would do is I'd be like, okay, we're making more money. It's looking good. We had a good month. Like, let's just invest. And I just convinced myself it was a good idea. Good or bad, we were going forward with it. And most of the time it ended up being a great idea because I trusted myself. I trust my team. We had a good structure. Things were well. But I would pull back and get like, I don't want to say greedy, but like scared. I'd get scared and we would invest. And then we get a couple of good clients and be like, oh yes, the world's great again. And with that, we go invest heavy and be like, oh, we're kind of back to where we were. But then we get ahead again. So it was a constant back and forth, but I never let myself get to a spot where like, oh, we're making great money. Let's just chill. I never allowed that. It was, if we're making good money all of a sudden, let's reinvest. And if that money goes away, guess what? Then I pushed myself to take the next step, and I'm sure we'll get there soon.
Every business, though, runs into seasonality, right? Whether it's economic reasons, meaning that the clients don't want to invest because it's 2008 and they're worried about economic meltdown, to, and it could be like we're still going through the current world situation we're going through. I cannot use that word, by the way, during my episode, because otherwise my video gets flagged. The world that we are living in right now, there's seasonality to it. Some of it has been incredible, I would say, in certain industries, while other industries are going bankrupt, because of, like, for example, the restaurant industry. The lockdown happens, they can only do delivery. Now, if they didn't invest in like local pickup delivery, like Uber Eats and Grubhub and those kind of services, and they don't know how to do those things, unfortunately, a lot of those restaurants went belly up, during this period, because nobody could come in, sit down, and eat, and there is no yellow pages to open up and order from using a phone, So when there is seasonality, how do you manage that seasonality? Because some of the months when there is less of an income or revenue coming into your business, the months that you were doing really well helps cushion some of that during those periods when you have more people on the bench.
Yeah, when we have a slow month, and we haven't really found too much of a season yet. December, people stop buying because they're doing holiday things. I think that's our one season that we found that gets slow. But let's just say you have a bad month in general. We use it to put our heads down and look at the company. How are our tools? What software are we using? How are we training our people? What is our plan for the future? Knowing that short period of time that we're going to have that down period is going to end, and we're going to be back in a period of growth again, and that we need to have a plan and preparation for that period of growth. So we've always used our downtime or any seasonality to put our heads down, look internally, and stop being on kind of that rat race, that treadmill of always growing, and look at what can we fix. And I think because of that, it makes our growth stronger when we get back out of that season.
Actually, it's funny. Earlier today, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who used to work with me in the past. I'm not going to say the name, so I'm going to give him the privacy. And he was actually hired as a leader. It's an agency. He ended up creating his organization, about 25 people. Basically the next stage that we're going to jump into the conversation in your journey.
Yeah.
When you have 25 people, when you have 5 people, you could manage all of them together, right? Because it's just 5 people. When you have 25 people, you can no longer manage them directly. You need to have a layer, at least, whether you're creating it by functional area or you're creating different types of things like that. How do you go about managing? Because there are a lot of challenges with it. It's not just giving out the tasks, right? It's also responsibilities and who's responsible for what. When you're making that transition, are there any kind of lessons learned from that process?
There are. One of my biggest lessons learned is don't ever give one person all the keys to the castle. I think one of the biggest lessons I learned was about 4 years ago, when I kind of put like an operations person in place and decided that I was going to focus on just sales and let them kind of grow the company. And, growing a fast growing company is not easy. Giving someone all the reins is not smart. Not only are they not positioned to know what to do, but things can fall through the cracks that are as important as an entrepreneur that they may not see. And so my biggest piece of advice there is don't give all the keys to one person, but slowly start transitioning your team from that 25 people or that 15 people, wherever you're at, and start giving people a little bit extra tasks, seeing who will go a step further, seeing who really wants to be there for the long run, seeing who is going to be a team player, who's going to accept criticism, who's going to work well with others. And through those kind of little tests and those small things, you'll see if they're a fit for it, and you'll see if they want it and if they can do it. And slowly that layer just gets created because others start to notice it too. They start to notice that extra work. They start to notice that they're not doing a task like that, and some of them really don't, or most of them really don't want to do that. And so while they've been tested and it's been proven, it's kind of a natural progression when you eventually do make that call and you let your team know, hey, this person's now a manager. You're going to report to them. They're going to help you. They're going to train you. They're going to guide you because my time isn't there enough to give to you guys. I'm giving you another support system.
You mentioned two words and you used it interchangeably. I'm going to pick on that one.
Okay.
On that topic. Leader versus manager.
Yes.
You said if they are leaders, and then you switched it to they are a good manager. I distinguish between those two things in a very big way. So what are your thoughts on that?
Fair. I feel you're going to tear me apart now. So in our company, we call a manager by title is just that position. So I use that at the end there just to define that it was
more of a role. Yeah.
Yeah, it was more of like a title type thing. But all of our managers are leaders. And I would never use the word manager when it comes to a training situation, a team situation, etc. We definitely use the word leader to define the leadership role that is, which is a support system down. For the managerial word, which I think you might agree with, is more of a top up, you report, and a leadership role is kind of a top down, I'm here to help type thing.
Yeah, because I've seen very talented young people not have the title of a manager, right? But they're just amazing natural born leaders.
Oh yeah.
And people look up to them to lead in different kind of situations, even though their title doesn't say paid media manager, it doesn't say director of XYZ, But if you check out their title, you think that they have probably a managerial title. It would be something like SEO specialist,
I know.
But the thing is, they're so talented from a purely leadership standpoint. People look up to them, even though they might be at the same level, or even so there may be even senior people that look at this person thinking that the person actually is a very good leader from that perspective.
We have tons of those people here that may be more defined as a leader, but don't have a title of a manager. And those are some of my favorite team members because they don't know how special they are, but so many people around them do. And I am so excited to always see their growth rates because some of them get surprised by it. And while the whole time, like other managers or even just like their peers are looking at them like, I know you're something special. And we have so many of those people here. And those are some of my favorite people because they have the most promise. There's so many things that they can do and achieve, especially in a fast growing company, that it just makes me happy.
What's the importance of culture? Because we were touching on leadership and all quality of employees and stuff like that. There's a responsibility on your side, right, as the founder of the company, to define what that culture is. Is it aggressive? Is it compassionate? Is it empathetic? Is it mentoring? There are so many different words to use for culture.
Our culture is defined by efficiency, fun, and collective ideas. So we have 21 or 22 philosophies, which we did steal from Dan Gilbert, the owner of Quicken Loans and the Cleveland Cavaliers. He's had a history with my family. I've always looked up to him as a leader. I think Quicken Loans, as one of the fastest growing companies in America, and obviously just with their recent IPO, has done an amazing job with their culture. Amazing job bringing people in, getting them to share ideas, getting them to work as a group, getting them to go the extra mile to push that company the way they did. So we literally stole his philosophies that he calls isms. I've added a few of my own, and we use them to keep our team in check, but also keep our leaders in check and get feedback back to the top. So culture is extremely important because a job can just be a job. And for the freelancers out there, you know what a job is, and you don't want a job. And that's why a lot of you become freelancers. But I keep my team members from becoming freelancers and keep them with our fast growing company and keep them motivated because they know they're in a place where they're not micromanaged. They know they're in a place where their ideas can be heard. They're not going to be judged, where they can speak up, that we respect ideas. And that one of the coolest things about our agency is that we change things quickly. You might bring a problem up and it might take a while to get changed. Here, we'll make a process change on a project immediately if we feel it's the right fit. And if it's not, we'll go back. So making sure our team knows that they can speak up and it's a place of friends and a place that we're all here for the same thing. Accelerated careers, keep learning, keep growing. And with that, the numbers and money will follow. But it's what we're doing here today that's going to create that.
How do you? Is there a element of education? I mean, education could mean formal or it could be informal. Like I could be teaching somebody if I'm part of your organization. I could be mentoring somebody in the organization versus somebody going and taking a nano degree from Google on a subject, right? How do you balance those two things? Is that part of the culture too?
Yeah, we have a few different things. So we have one thing here called DR Classroom, where the manager of the department every month or one of the leaders on that team will give a 30-minute to an hour classroom on a special topic regarding their department. All team members across the board are invited to come in at any time. They can leave their desk. That time is paid. Like it's we want you to learn and grow. And we get a ton of great feedback from our team on that because they feel like they have the freedom to learn other things that aren't in their department. They can leave their desk. They know they can go in there and that we actually value them going in and that we value that growth and learning. And for our leaders who present those conversations in our DR classrooms, we know that they're getting to put together their ideas and get feedback at the same time. So our teams has loved DR Classroom, but we also do it on a smaller level too. You know, we have a pod system where we have 2, 3 account managers, 4 account managers who will work together for the betterment of their clients. If someone's out of office, someone's helping them out. And that's another thing we kind of borrowed from the Quicken Loans arena. But that culture of learning, we've definitely instilled through some systemization of classrooms and a group work.
And are there any kind of as you go through different clients, right? You learn about industries, you learn the ebb and flow of industries and stuff like that. Some projects work out great, right? You know, it's a grand slam, everybody's celebrating. But I found it in my career that, you know, when you're not doing so great is when you're learning the most. You know, you're learning the most not only about your company, you're learning more about yourself also, right? That you thought you were the king, you're not, you're nothing. You know, you just found out that you were very capable of certain things. Is there because it also touches on education and culture? Do you guys do like postmortem of projects to see what happened, what worked great, and what sucked?
Every single team, when we lose a client, does a postmortem on it. So if someone leaves our Google Ads division, the Google Ads team does their own postmortem on what could have physically been done inside the project to get better results, if any. And the account manager also does a postmortem on how they could have handled the account better. Again, either which could have been a problem or neither of them, but we're always analyzing that for every single account that leaves us so we can learn from it.
Very cool. And how do you implement that change across the company though?
So whenever we use Basecamp as a project management system, and whenever they are told to close a project or archive it, they have to create a to-do in their team's Basecamp that lists out these certain questions that they then have to answer. It gets reassigned back to the manager of the team, the leader of the team, to review their questions and give them any feedback and say, hey, you're not totally right on what happened there, or yes, you could have done that, or hey, they closed their business due to COVID. We couldn't have done anything differently here. So from that, once it's reviewed by both the manager and then the team member again, then we kind of close that postmortem out and we take it as a learning process.
So let me share with you, when I was a young buck, you know, I'm a bit older right now. When I think I was 23, 24 years old, flying very high. I thought I knew everything at that time. You know, so does every 23-year-old at, you know, in their age. I was part of a project, and I was not a senior person. You can imagine it's 23, so I was, you know, somewhere in the middle there, or maybe even very beginning, right? A project failed miserably, right? Miserable failure. You know, I would like to share that live with all of my audience right now. I felt horrible. I was depressed. I like, how could this happen? You know, I did everything that I was thinking, you know, even though it was a team. What I remember doing at that time, and actually I found that thing that I did very recently and I read it to myself. This was from when I was 23, 24 years old. I wrote down all the things that I had seen that had gone wrong with the project, and how in future, when I come across these kinds of things, what kind of actions I would take, like whether it's alerting a supervisor, manager, director, whoever is responsible to listen to whatever I have to say, that I would do those things. This was a pretty long write-up, by the way, at that time. It was a very long write-up. I came across that writing. I was cleaning my office upstairs and in my home, and I came across this write-up, and I'm reading this. Now I'm twice the age. I'm reading it and go like, wow, I don't remember writing this. Like the stuff that I wrote in there, at the time I wrote it, I did not realize what those things were. It was just a thing that I felt that needed to be done, not that it was the right thing to do at that
makes
time.
Sense.
Now, looking at it twice the age with experience, I go like, wow, those were pretty deep insights. Like, but at the time that I wrote it, it was no such deep insights. It was more like, it was a combination of anger about failure and all of those kinds of things, all mushed into trying to do something productive in that letter to myself, when I was writing it down, just to kind of get that energy out of my system. Some people do journaling and stuff.
Oh yeah.
I had written this whole thing, thinking that, this would be helpful, at least to get it out of my system. And it did help at that time.
I'd say probably needed it at the time.
Yeah. But reading it, what's funny is you learn, reading it so much later, you get a perspective. So what it did to me at an older age is when I see somebody who's younger, much younger, like 23 years old, because I was that person back then, right? When somebody at that age is complaining about something, and I might actually take it as a complaint, I shouldn't. I should have an open, an open mind to really think through what the person is saying. The person may not understand what they're saying. This is where my experience comes in as the older person in that relationship, to put context around it, at least, to kind of hear what they have to say. It might be something very deep, but they may not realize it, because I didn't realize it when I was young. Even though when I'm looking at my own writing, I think that I was so insightful. I was not.
Yeah, I think that for all my team members listening, I think there's a lot of them. I think that they really need to take to heart what you just said, because it rings true for so many of our young team members and how we need to guide them through the process. Yeah.
The thing is, the more you live and learn philosophy, if you implement that in your life, if they're listening, the better it is, right? And assuming that you know everything, you don't. That's a fact. Never. Otherwise, we should be dead, right? If we know everything, we should be dead. There's no need for living anymore, because we got everything. There's no need for it anymore. But if you treat, whether you are 23 or you're 58, it doesn't matter. I've actually taught a class as a professor at a local college. Some of my students, at the time I taught it, I was 26, 27 years old. My students were in their 50s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and I thought that was fabulous, that people, even at that age, that if they believe that they have more to learn, great, amazing. And I took that to heart, that I'm never going to stop learning, because every moment you have, and plus, especially in digital marketing, social marketing, e-commerce, in 2021.
It keeps changing. It's crazy.
If you assume you know everything, you know what? Wrong assumption. Right? You should go and change your field. Go to another field that doesn't change that often. This field is ever changing. You can ask Facebook and what they learned about Apple making a change.
Oh my God. I know.
Yeah. So you find those gems in your organization, right? Out of the 75, I'm sure you have a handful of them that are very talented, and you really want to invest in them, and they're fully vested in the company too, because you can see it through their performance.
Yeah.
How do you nurture them into like leadership skills? And because they may be diamond in the rough, they may not know anything about leadership skills, So how do you nurture them to grow them in your organization?
One of the biggest things I believed in from the beginning was allowing people to make their own decisions, make their own mistakes, learn from them, and not get beat up by them. So we've done a lot of on-the-job learning. I mean, this is my first time leading a team for the most part, especially in this kind of realm. And so I'm still learning. And so because I'm learning and my team under me is still learning, we're learning together. So creating an environment where they can make their own decisions, they won't be judged for failure. And as long as they're learning from them, we can keep progressing. That's what's made, I think, the biggest impact on my team. Now, it's to an extent for sure. You can't learn everything just by making mistakes. You definitely have to learn from other people sometimes. So as of recent, we've signed up with a management training system to help us learn from other managers that are out there in the world. It's a group coaching session. And so we're learning from them. We're talking through our problems. And it's kind of like management therapy. And so that through that management therapy and from learning from other people, they're getting a lot out of it. But you know what a really cool thing is, Sabir? And it was like the second session, my team said it to me. They said, I'm talking to other managers and companies who are 500 people, been around for 30 years, and they're asking me how we do things. They're asking me about the tools that we use. They're asking me how I came up with that idea. And it was really satisfying for me after a very long time, actually, for the managers who are a lot of them first-time managers to say, I didn't realize we were doing so much right. And that was the coolest thing because it was somewhat validation, but obviously they're continuing to learn. But when you're in a fast-growing company and no one's done this before, to know that you're doing things right through talking with other people in other companies is a really cool feeling. So we're continuing to learn. We're doing that coaching session, but we're getting a kind of both sides out of it.
You know, sometimes when you're in that journey, in the moment, right, you don't realize that the thing you're doing, you might be actually innovating something new or a new way of doing something that to you seems obvious. It's a very obvious thing. Yeah, it's just an Excel spreadsheet. What are you talking about, right? However, that Excel spreadsheet, nobody else in the industry uses. You know,
Yeah.
they never thought of using it that way. They don't follow the Shay principle, right, of doing that spreadsheet or anything like that. Like, so to you, when you're inside of it, you think that that's the obvious answer.
Yeah.
But there are so many people around you. I mean, I think that's why, I mean, especially in like South Florida, I'm sure that there's a community around you that you attend with other entrepreneurs. And you mention, for a brief second, you mention something. Go like, somebody walks up to you, goes like, hey, oh, you mentioned that thing.
Tell
How
me
do
more.
you do that? Tell me more. I want to know more about that. To you, it was an obvious comment and it was just a simple thing that you said. But the thing you don't realize, you may have, or they might not be in the digital agency business. They may be running a dental laboratory, you know,
Yeah.
but they found that comment to be so useful that they could actually bring that idea into their organization.
100%.
Yep. So one of the challenges of having a digital marketing agency or social marketing, any of these kind of service-based companies, right? Growth usually means, like, if I have 15 people, if I need to take on another client, that means that I need to hire another 7 people, right?
Yeah.
If I need to get a even bigger client than that, that means that I may need to hire 12 people, right, to my organization. How do you balance scaling of your business and kind of the human capital that you need to invest in, human resources, people, and all the training that goes into it, and time and payroll and everything else? How do you balance those two things versus investing in the company to create assets?
So when you say assets, Sabir, define those assets real quick for me.
So some agencies that I know, what they have done, actually, I know a few agencies. They started with agency model. They came up with that spreadsheet example I just gave you. They came up with a tool that became an asset, and they went like, oh, we don't want to be an agency anymore. We will become a SaaS company, right? Because the Google Ads AI thing we were doing is very unique and it's a great IP. We're going to pivot to that. No longer agency. We are a tools company. We're an asset. That's an asset.
You know, for us, we haven't gotten into those asset side of things yet. And it's definitely something we want to do. And we have some ideas for it that we're actually working on, but we haven't started to execute. So we're not really there. But to back to your first question, which is, how do you determine when to hire? From day one, I've looked at output. You know, how much can we do with our time? What are the dollars associated with that time? What can we pay people for that time to be able to equal a profit margin that's acceptable in our industry? And we're constantly managing that and optimizing that on a month-over-month basis. So for me, it was always, you can't get the client unless you have the people. So we've always, for the most part, when we can, have been overstaffed. Right now, we're looking for like 7 team members, but in most cases, we've been overstaffed because we want to be prepared for our growth. I think a lot of agencies sometimes get afraid to bring in that client because they don't have the team members. They don't know if they can train them up quick enough. I'd rather eat the loss on a piece of payroll and be able to get that next client and to be able to take that next step, kind of back and forth, than to not be able to get that client and always be stuck here. So the human capital, I'm very much willing to invest in if it means we can continue to grow. And it's just about monitoring what are the dollars coming in for your product or service, how much can actually be done by one individual, and then how can we continue to optimize that. So we've been really good at optimization and efficiencies of our time and our processes through different tools, Sabir. So that might actually be that asset you were talking about.
Now, how do you diversify your services, right? When you're starting up, when Shay was one person, right? He knew about SEO and he knew about social. Like,
Yeah.
you see how I'm bringing this back again to the beginning of the conversation, right? So, you started with those 2 skill sets, and those were probably your services. Now you start growing. Now it's 15 people. Now it's 20 people, 25 people. When do you decide to add on Google Ads as a service, affiliate marketing, paid services? Like, let's say paid media being initially Facebook and Instagram, but then TikTok and Snapchat and other content writing and other types of services. I mean, the list could go on forever and ever. So when do you decide to add on those services? Take me through that.
It's kind of a feeling. You get asked about it enough times you have to say no. You're like, how much money am I leaving on the table? And after you start getting that feeling of money being left on the table, you think about, okay, if I did do this, does this really complement my business? Does it really fit into my service mix? How can I process this out? Can I scale it? And if you can figure out answer those questions and say yes to the scalability, it might be something to look at. Now, the next biggest fear that I hear from an entrepreneur when they get past that stage is then, how can I afford this? I don't currently have any clients that will pay for this. I have to have the person before I can get the client, like we just talked about. And so we have 2 options. Number one is start outsourcing and find a great outsourcer, pay too much, obviously, compared to having someone yourself, and let that outsourcing happen. Eventually pull that from the outsourced team and bring it in-house. And that's a great option if you can find a quality outsourcer, because if you become known for a poor quality service, you're not going to be able to sell enough to make it a real branch of the company. And so for us, what we did most of the time is we would hire the person full-time or hope we can get someone part-time, but that's rare. And just start selling. Go to our current clients, offer them reduced rates, offer them to get on a trial period, and try and get that overhead of that new person's salary paid for so you can make it a thing. One of the most recent things that we put in was a CRM that we built out, and now we're offering our clients to better manage their lead flow. And because we have that CRM, we need someone to manage it. So it was actually an internal team member who had a passion for integrations, who was like, I'm going to build out the CRM, new clients can come on. And we slowly got to pull them out of one team into what will soon be their own. And so we got very lucky there that we already had that resource in-house, and we got to make it a shared resource. But for almost every other service, we had to take the leap and get the person before we could start making the sales.
What is the CRM that you're using for lead flow and lead generation and lead management?
We're using High Level.
High Level. Okay. I've heard of also Pipedrive.
I have 2.
Yeah,
High Level had a really good partner program, and it looks beautiful, functions well for what our clients typically need it for.
Oh, very cool. So here's the thing that's the life of every single entrepreneur, especially leaders that own the company, right? You wear too many hats, way too many hats, right? You're the president. At another meeting, you're a sales manager. HR and operations need to handle things. You're the COO, right?
Yeah.
What does your day look like? Just wearing so many different hats, and how do you prioritize between going to a sales meeting to playing the president to managing payroll?
So it's week by week, but I use block scheduling, and I live and die by my calendar. If it's not on my calendar, it is not happening.
Do you color code it?
I do color code it based on personal, vacation time, and business. Those are my 3 colors.
Me too.
So starting typically at about 8 a.m., I have blocks of time between 30 minutes an hour, block nonstop until about 7 to 8 p.m. every single day. Throughout that day is 80% sales meetings, maybe 20% internal meetings. And if something random comes up, that's a stressor because we don't have a block that's open in our schedule typically. When a client says they need to reschedule, sometimes that's a sigh of relief because I get to do some internal things. But it's block scheduling throughout the entire day. If I get a call that ends at, on the 45 and I have 15 minutes left, it's emails, it's to-dos in Basecamp, it's responding to Slacks, dive right back in. At about 8 o'clock, I go home. And from there, I'm working on accounting, cleaning up my business, cleaning up the to-dos, making sure I'm caught up with Salesforce, creating proposals, and preparing for the next day. That's, again, back-to-back 8 to 8 in terms of meeting standpoint. I usually go to sleep around somewhere between 12 and 2 o'clock in the morning. And I wake back up at 6:30 the next day and do it again. Luckily, payroll only happens twice a month. So I get to have 2 nights a month where I do that. And the biggest thing, Sabir, is that when you have 75 people in a company and you have to, when things come up and you're doing that block scheduling, you don't make room, something has to give. And if something does come up, the sales call will definitely give. The internals matter the most. And I definitely want my focus there. And ultimately, I'll get out of sales one day soon. And I'll definitely be more of the focus on operations. But when it comes to what matters, it's what matters in that moment and how you can schedule out in the future. So my calendars are typically scheduled out 2 to 3 weeks in advance.
Very cool. Well, Shay, thank you for sharing all of your thoughts with us. And I ask every guest that I have on the show to share their number one $100,000 expert insight into, because everyone who's watching this, whether they're watching it live or they're watching it recorded later on, what is your number one advice that you would give them or insight into starting and growing your digital agency?
So it's a two-part piece. Number one, there's always a way.
So it's $200,000. Is that what you're saying?
200,000 we're bringing to the table here.
Okay, sounds good.
There's always a way is my personal philosophy. Since I was young, my mom instilled in me that you can make anything happen. While it may not be a direct path, a zigzag path, or a diagonal path, you will find a way. And if you don't find that way, maybe that way wasn't important and we can change what we're actually going after. So believing in yourself and pushing through is one of the biggest things. But with that is setting goals that are achievable, that you think you can achieve. From the day I started my company, I said to my father, when he convinced me to start this company, when I was about to do that landscaping company, I said, I will make this one of the fastest growing companies in America within 3 years. And if you don't set that goal, you can never achieve it. So I believe in setting a bar, because you're always going to come in either above, at, or below the bar, and no one's judging you but yourself. So set high bars and go for them, and know that there's always a way to make things happen if you just keep pushing, keep trying, and literally not giving up sounds corny, but it's a real thing to keep pushing through. So
shoot for the stars and land on the moon. You still got out of Earth, basically.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Shay, for joining us and sharing your journey with us. What an incredible journey, first of all. And thank you, audience, for tuning in. And hopefully you got a lot of value from it. We have a lot more this week with Sabir episodes coming up with a lot, quite a few very talented guests like Shay. So please tune in and keep checking us out. And if you visit the channel, there are a lot more other interviews with top talented people that we've had on the show. Shay, thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me today. It was a great time.
All right. Thank you, everyone.